They looked me up and down like I didn't belong. I walked into that bank needing simple service, but instead they made me feel invisible. What they didn't know? I own the company that owns their branch, and 10 minutes later they were all out of jobs. Let me tell you everything. If you've ever been underestimated because of your skin, your gender, or your success, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their power, and stay until the end, because justice was served cold. It was just a regular Tuesday morning, nothing fancy about it. The kind of morning where you're not expecting anything dramatic, just a simple errand to check off your list. The sun was already up, but the air still felt cool, and I had my usual iced coffee in hand, driving through the city streets like I always do. I wasn't dressed to impress, just a neat black blazer over a cream blouse, slim-fit jeans, and low heels. My hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, my favourite gold studs in my ears. Simple, clean, professional. That's how I move. I don't feel the need to prove anything with what I wear. My presence speaks loud enough. I was in my silver Mercedes, the one I drive most days, not the showy one people expect a CEO to pull up in. I don't care for all that. I've built a life where I can have nice things, but I've never needed to scream my status. That day was about business, not appearances. I had one task on my mind: get to the bank, make the transfer, and keep payroll running smoothly. We had just closed a new deal over the weekend, and I needed to move funds into one of our operating accounts to cover team payments. It wasn't the kind of thing I usually handle personally, I have a team for that, but the numbers needed to hit by noon, and I wanted to make sure it got done right. Sometimes when you lead, you still got to roll your sleeves up and handle things yourself. I pulled into the parking lot and took a deep breath before stepping out. The bank was just a small, tidy branch on the corner of a busy street, nothing glamorous, but I'd been there once before. It was part of a regional chain we'd recently acquired through one of our holding companies. Most people in that branch wouldn't know that, though. I wasn't walking in there as the boss. I was just another customer today, just another black woman with paperwork in her handbag and purpose in her stride. As I walked toward the entrance, I remember feeling calm, focused. I had no idea what was waiting for me on the other side of that glass door. To me, it was just business as usual. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't trying to make a point. I just needed to do what any other business owner would do: walk into a bank, speak to a representative, and make a transaction. It's wild how things can flip so quickly, how a regular morning can turn into a moment that defines you. At that point, I didn't know I was about to walk straight into disrespect, doubt, and disbelief, all because of how I looked. And I definitely didn't know I'd walk out 30 minutes later with every single person in that branch out of a job. But before we get there, let me tell you what happened next. As soon as I stepped inside the bank, the air shifted. You know that feeling when you walk into a space and suddenly feel like all eyes are on you, but not in a good way? Yeah, that. The receptionist glanced up, then looked right back down like I wasn't even there. No hello, no smile, nothing. A few customers in line gave me that quick once-over, the kind that says they've already decided who you are just based on your skin and your shoes. I walked up to the counter and politely said, "Hi, I'm here to make a business transfer." The woman behind the glass gave me one of those tight-lipped smiles, like she'd rather be anywhere else. She asked, "Do you have an appointment?" Her tone was sharp, cold. I told her no, but I've made transfers here before without one. She raised an eyebrow. "This line is for business clients only." I said again, calmly, "I am a business client." She didn't even check the system, just looked me over like I was lying. Right then, I knew. This wasn't about policy, this was about perception, and they had already made up their minds about me. I handed over my ID and business card, hoping that would clear things up. The clerk took them like she was doing me a favour. She glanced at the card, then at me and said, "Hold on." No explanation, no reassurance. She walked off toward the back office with my information in hand. I stood there, trying to stay calm, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest. While I waited, I noticed two staff members whispering and glancing my way. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their looks said enough. I was being judged, not by my credentials, but by the color of my skin and the assumptions that came with it. After a few minutes, the branch manager came out. A middle-aged man with a stiff smile and a voice coated in fake politeness. He looked me up and down and said, "We're not sure your account qualifies for that kind of transaction at this location." I blinked. "What do you mean? I've made similar transactions here before," he shrugged. "It might be better if you visited a larger branch downtown. They're more equipped for complex business needs." Complex business needs? This was a basic wire transfer. There was nothing complex about it. What he really meant was, you don't look like someone who runs a real business. I felt the sting of being unseen, disrespected, and underestimated. Again. Like my presence somehow didn't match the picture they had in their heads of what success looks like. I took a deep breath. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. Because little did they know, the woman they were brushing off wasn't just a customer. She was the one signing their paychecks. They just hadn't realized it yet. At that moment, standing there being doubted and dismissed, I couldn't help but think back to where I came from. Because, see, people like them. They only see what's in front of them. They don't see the grind. The nights I stayed up building this dream from scratch, the years I worked jobs nobody wanted just to fund my first idea. I wasn't born into money. I wasn't handed any shortcuts. I'm a girl from the south side of Chicago, raised by a single mum who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. We didn't have much, but she gave me something more valuable than anything in a bank: belief. She told me I could be anything if I stayed focused and worked hard, and I did. Fast forward years later, I graduated top of my class, launched a startup from my tiny apartment, and turned it into a multi-million-dollar company before I hit 30. Now I run a portfolio of businesses across real estate, tech, and finance. I employ over 300 people, and ironically, one of my companies had just acquired the very bank I was standing in. But I don't walk around with a sign that says, CEO, I don't need to. My work speaks for itself. My silence is often louder than my words. I never lead with my title because I want to be treated like any other human being with basic respect. That day, though, I realized something. Sometimes people need to know exactly who they're messing with. Not for ego, not for revenge, but to remind them. Black women belong in every room, especially the ones we own. And I wasn't going to let this moment pass without teaching them that lesson. As I stood there, listening to the manager try to politely push me out, something clicked. I glanced over at the plaque on the wall. It had the bank's name and the branch code engraved beneath it. That code looked familiar. Too familiar. I pulled out my phone and opened our company's internal database. I typed in the branch code, and sure enough, there it was. This exact location was part of the regional acquisition we had finalized just 2 months ago. The papers were still fresh. The ink might not have even dried on the internal memos. That's when it hit me like a wave. They work for me. Every person in that building. That same branch manager, that same rude teller, even the receptionist who couldn't bother to say hello. They were employees under one of the holding companies I own, and they had absolutely no idea who I was. They didn't care to ask, they didn't care to check. Because in their minds, I didn't look like someone important, I didn't look like power. But that was about to change, because I had the power to do more than walk out. I had the power to clean house. I stepped outside the bank, the manager's words still echoing in my head. But now I wasn't upset. I was focused. I sat down in my car, took a deep breath, and called my executive assistant. "Can you pull up the branch details for the Midtown location?" I asked. Within seconds, she confirmed everything I already knew. "Yes, ma'am. That location's under our financial services division, fully transitioned last quarter. You want me to get HR looped in?" Absolutely, I said. I want the regional HR director and our legal counsel on a call in 10 minutes. Set it up. I sat there, staring through the windshield, watching people walk in and out of the branch like nothing had happened. But for me, something big had just shifted. I wasn't going to let this moment slip by like all the other quiet slights I'd endured in boardrooms, meetings, and negotiations. Number this time, I had the power, and I was going to use it. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. The call was live. I briefed the HR director on what happened. I gave names, details, and everything I'd experienced firsthand. I want this handled today, I said firmly. This isn't just about me. It's about making sure no other client, especially no other black woman, is ever treated this way again. They took me seriously. How could they not? I wasn't just venting, I was giving a directive. And when you sit at the top, your words don't echo, they shake things loose. I ended the call and gathered my things. It was time to go back inside, not as a customer, not as a woman they dismissed, but as the boss they never saw coming. I walked back into the bank with a different kind of energy. This time I wasn't asking. I wasn't hoping they'd treat me with respect. I was demanding it, without raising my voice, without breaking a sweat. The same receptionist looked up, confused to see me again. I gave her a small smile and said, "Can you let your manager know that the owner of this branch would like to speak with him?" Her face went pale. She froze for a second, then picked up the phone with shaking fingers. The lobby fell into a weird silence, like the whole building knew something had shifted. A few people looked at me again, only this time there was a flicker of curiosity instead of dismissal. The manager came out, that same fake smile stretched across his face, but his eyes gave him away. I could see the nervousness building behind them. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Yes," I said calmly. "I just got off the phone with regional HR. I've informed them about the behavior I experienced here today. You'll be receiving a formal notice shortly. As of this moment, your employment with this branch is terminated." His jaw dropped. I turned to the teller. "Same goes for you, and your receptionist." You could hear a pin drop. "I suggest you gather your belongings and exit the building," I said. "Security and HR will follow up to ensure the transition is handled properly." I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I simply enforced the standard I've worked my whole life to set. Because when you build something from the ground up, you don't let anyone disrespect it, or you. And definitely not in a building you own. The silence after I delivered those words was louder than any argument could have been. The manager stood there, blinking, trying to process what had just happened. His mouth opened, then closed again like he wanted to speak, but there was nothing he could say that would fix it. The teller looked stunned, her eyes wide, her face pale. The receptionist? She quietly picked up her things and walked toward the back, like she already knew this day was coming. I stayed right there in the center of the lobby, calm, collected, watching them scramble. HR had already sent a follow-up email confirming everything in writing. It was done. Some might say it was harsh, but let me be clear. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. If they could treat me like that, knowing nothing about who I was, imagine how many others had been disrespected, dismissed, or denied over the years. Customers who didn't have the power or the title to fight back, people just trying to make a deposit, ask a question or get a loan, and walking away feeling small. That ends with me. Before I left, I spoke to the assistant branch manager, the only one who had stayed quiet but respectful the whole time. I let her know she'd be temporarily leading the branch while HR conducted interviews for new hires. As I stepped out the door, the same sun that had greeted me earlier now felt warmer, brighter, because this time I wasn't just walking away from disrespect, I was walking toward change. And the next time someone like me walks into that branch, they won't be treated like a stranger. They'll be welcomed like the valuable customer and human being they are. Driving away from that bank, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. like something heavy had been lifted off my chest. For so long, I've stayed quiet in moments like that. I've smiled through disrespect, brushed it off, kept it moving. Because as black women, we're taught that speaking up makes us angry, emotional, or difficult. So we learn to choose our battles carefully. We pick our peace over our pride. But this time, I didn't let it slide, and I'm glad I didn't. What happened in that branch wasn't new. It was just another reminder of how easily people judge you based on how you look, not what you've earned. I've been underestimated my whole life. I've had people assume I was the assistant, the intern, the help, anything but the boss. But that's the thing. They can't box me in anymore. I built my seat at the table, and now I own the table and the building it sits in. This wasn't just about me getting the last word. It was about showing what accountability looks like in real time, about making sure no one else has to swallow that same kind of hurt in silence. And to every black woman listening right now, let this be your reminder. You don't have to dim your light for anyone. You don't have to shrink to fit inside their idea of what power looks like. You are the power. You are the voice, the vision, the whole legacy. I stood up for myself that day, not with rage, but with truth, not with noise, but with action. And I'll do it again every time someone tries to make me forget who I am. Because now, I don't just walk into rooms, I own them. If this story hit you in the heart, drop a comment and share your moment of rising above ignorance. Hit the like button and subscribe, because every week I share real stories of what it means to be a powerful black woman in a world that still doesn't always see us. Stay strong, stay unstoppable,